So I also chose to talk about this theme. I actually heard about this theme and felt a sense of being called to the stage because I spent most of my life identifying also as a born-again Christian. And that was because I went to a summer camp as well. I went to a camp not unlike the camp portrayed in Jesus Camp. And slowly but surely sort of found myself not identifying with that anymore when I went to university. And so when I was thinking about what story to tell, I was looking back on my Christian experiences, wondering if I should talk about being a missionary in the Dominican Republic or leading worship at a retreat up in Muskoka. And I sat down with my roommate and I was like, what should I talk about? And she came up with this story, which I would never have thought as having a nexus to my Christian life, but it's actually pretty appropriate. So this is the story about how I lost my virginity at the age of 25, which was less than a year ago, in fact, and how I came from being a born-again Christian to who I am today. And before I start, I just want to say I don't disrespect anyone who still identifies as Christian. It's just not who I am anymore. So in order to understand this story, you need to understand how I was taught to view sex. And the one thing I remember is this symbol that my youth pastor showed to us. And he said that when you have a relationship with someone, you can connect with them on a lot of different levels. The spiritual level, intellectual level, emotional level, and then there's the physical level, which was represented by the middle finger. And the idea was that the closer you get to someone on all these other levels, the harder it is to keep yourself apart from that person on the physical level. So there was that metaphor. It was a little scary. And then once you are connected on that level, it's like you're never going to come apart. There's some sort of spell that comes over you. And there's this intense connection with the person that you can't sever. And that was true even if these other elements weren't there. As long as this was there, you couldn't stop thinking about the person. And so God was trying to protect you from yourself by telling you don't go there with a person you're not married to, someone you can't fully trust. And so as I started to not identify as being Christian anymore, you can understand I was pretty scared about romantic relationships. I didn't want to take any kind of risk. And I slowly started to think, okay, you know, maybe if I have this, and this, I can have this with the person. I'll be comfortable. So I started to look for that full connection. I did online dating, and it just didn't really work out for me. So I was like, okay, well, if this isn't going to happen, maybe I'll just try for this. And another thing you need to understand about me is that I'm a fairly A-type person. I'm a law student. I'm goal-oriented. And so it was April, and I decided, the semester was ending, and I decided, you know, by the end of the summer, I would like to have sex. And as luck would have it, I met a cute tax lawyer, and I met him in May. So not too long from when I made that goal. And for privacy's sake, we'll call him Pedro. And so Pedro and I had a couple encounters, but the one I want to talk about is this special night. And this night I was staying at my parents' place because they were leaving in the morning to go on vacation. And they're very particular about their dog, so they needed me to be there in the morning to let the dog out when they left at 7 in the morning. And I got a call from Pedro, and Pedro was drunk. And he said, you know, I'd really like to see you tonight. And at this point, I'm like, yes, this is a great opportunity. Started to really not think about things, borrowed my parents' car, and went down to pick him up at a bar. And Pedro walks out of the bar, stumbles out of the bar, nearly gets run over crossing the street, and is holding a full pint glass in his hand. And walks into my car, or gets into my car with this pint glass in his hand. And at this point, my Christian self, or former Christian self, was kind of freaking out. Like, yeah, I don't like to break rules. I like rules, and there were rules being broken. But, you know, my eyes are on the prize. And he gets into the car with this pint glass. And at this point, I have two decisions. I can go back to the house that I rent with my friends and spend time with him there, but they're having a big dinner party. And the idea of being heard having sex for the first time is really not appealing to me. So I decide to take the second option, which is to sneak him back into my parents' place. we have a really long house. You need to understand that to understand this. So like you can be at another end of the house and not know that other people are in it. And sometime on the way up to my parents' place, he calls my roommate and advises her that we are about to have hot animal sex. Yes, okay, great. And I take my phone back from him, and the first thing I do is put it in the cup holder, which is where I always put my phone. And the second I let go of my phone, I know that I've just dropped it into a pint of beer. And this is a new phone that I got with an upgrade, a $400 phone. And I'm starting to think, you know, the cost of this adventure is adding up. I've already risked a potential DUI charge, a $400 phone. I've already secured the everlasting disapproval of Jesus. And possibly the disapproval of my parents. But I keep going because I'm still very focused on getting this. So I sneak him into my parents' place relatively easy. And I'm still not very comfortable talking about sex. It's part of growing up as a Christian teenager. You talk about God instead of talking about sex, and so I don't have the comfort level that I wish I had. But I will say that the experience was fun. It was great. It was worth it. We had sex in many positions. And I know that for some people it can be a difficult experience, but for me it wasn't. And anyway, the next morning I started to realize that we didn't have a lot in common. While this may have been there, these other elements just were never going to happen. But as it turns out, he'd left his watch at my place, and I took this as a sign, you know, maybe we can reconnect, maybe we can do this again. But as it turns out, he never came back to get his watch, and he never came back to get this. And, you know, I look forward to the day when I can have a full and beautiful connection with a person, although it's interesting that the next time I ended up sleeping with someone was in Vegas, but that's a very different story. And in a sense, that whole experience was me being born again in a different way, because there was this whole side of myself that I really denied all through a really formative period of my life, and to be able to open that to myself and open it to the world was really an important thing for me. So in that way, I was born again. Thank you. Yeah.